Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Warriors for Christ. Sorry about the delay. Had some technical issues, but we're glad to be here and to be, discussing another topic. Once again, I'm Damian Gibbs. We got Tiffany Gibbs, my wife, and then we got Kiara Marcato here as well. So, thank everyone. Thank you. I hope everybody had a good week, and I think today is going to be an interesting topic. We also supposed to have another member, another individual on the podcast. They may join. They may join later. I'm not sure. But today's topic, it is, I think, is very relevant, and it is one that was suggested by one of our viewers. So we figure we're dive into that this week. There was nothing last week, so we're gonna discuss that, see how it goes. So the topic is, how should one um, handle a disruptive marriage or disruptive relationship, one that is not going well? How do the individual conduct themselves? So we're gonna go forward from here. Does anybody want to dive into that topic first? One of you guys here, or Tiffany? Would
What
anyone you like
what
to?
was the topic?
The topic is, how do one handle themselves within a disruptive marriage or disruptive relationship? Or how does one respond? Say it that way. How does one
Okay.
respond to a marriage that is not going well, or a relationship that is not going well?
Um, I would like to just preface with I've only been married 8 years, so I'm gonna speak about relationship and
Okay.
not necessarily only for all marriages or for the topic of marriage. I think that I think that I have to ask: Are you referring to Christian relationships?
Yes. Yeah. So most of the things that we're gonna talk about here is always be from a Christian perspective,
Okay.
but we can also give advice to. It can be advice for non-believers as well. So just marriage in general. But if you have two perspectives from a marriage, or sorry, a Christian one or a non-Christian one, you can free to discuss it. It does. There's no necessary limits to the topic.
Okay. The first thing that came to my mind is that the world will know that we are God's disciples out of love for one another. So I feel like our response to all subjects, to all situations, should be according to God's scriptural representation of love. And the other word that came to my mind was, because I'm assuming we're we're speaking about conflict. So forgiveness, like being able to forgive quickly. So we should respond by forgiving quickly.
All right. I think Tiffany stepped away for a second. So when I look at it, um, like I said, I always try to give a perspective from it. Um, and biblically, I always say that if individuals having trouble with their marriage, the first thing they want to have to ask themselves is, do they want the relationship to work? Do they want the marriage to work? And based on that, an individual can either move forward with it, or just decide to back out of it. Of course, being a Christian, uh, my preference and according to the Bible is that you shouldn't get a divorce. You shouldn't break up. But if an individual wants to break up, that's their choice. The Lord is still going to love them either way. But if the individual does decide that they want the marriage to work out, even if the partner doesn't want it to work out, but if they're still together and they haven't divorced yet or they haven't split, the individual who wants to work out has to focus on themselves. It's easily, we can easily say, you know, that it's the other one's fault. But if the individual better themselves, I think it overall can better relationship. As in, if we were to look at Christ, we do stuff wrong all the time. In that, he's still married to us. He doesn't push us away. He always try to be good. He's always good. So we can follow that same lead and just like, what, I'm not gonna focus on what the other member may be doing or what's causing this to break apart. I'm a better myself. Because even if you just better yourself as an individual, it's gonna always be better for the relationship. So we need to focus on ourselves in the marriage, and then I believe that can help the marriage overall, and not like say pointing the finger and fall into arguments and everything. If an individual is arguing or just always stirring something up, don't fall into it. Just try to be better. Just try to be a better member in that relationship, in that marriage, and I think it works. I think it will work out that way. Like I said, only been married for 7 years, but it so far has been working. Just don't fall into the arguments. Don't feel the anger, debate. Just focus on yourself, and I believe by bettering ourselves within the relationship, it can overall help the the union that you may be having. Tiffany, you want to add to that?
I agree with what you said as far as focusing on yourself. Um, I think a few things to remember is like I think it's important whether you're a Christian or not, or that you really think about how you interact with your partner. I think it's important that we learn how to quote unquote fight fair. Um, Whenever you're having a disagreement, which disagreements are going to happen in any relationship, whether they be Christian, not Christian, whatever, you're not always going to agree with your partner. But I think it's really important that you don't make everything accusatory when you're having conflict. So I think it shouldn't be like, well, you always do this, because that's going to automatically put a person on the defensive. You really want to like start thinking about things like, I don't, you might say like so you're making it about you. I don't appreciate when this happens this way. That's less likely to put the person on the defensive. I think that's really important. I think, Damien, just like you said, you have to make a decision when you go into a relationship, especially marriage. Do you want this to work? If you want this to work, then you are going to do your part. And that means looking at yourself. A lot of times it's easy for us to point to what the other person is doing wrong, but it's a harder thing to take a look at yourself and see what you could be doing to contribute to the issue. So I think it's important that, like you said, like essentially you worry about yourself. What are you doing that is helping to cause whatever disagreements or arguments? What are you doing that is possibly making your partner unhappy? What and also not focus on trying to change the other person or make the other person necessarily see things your own way. Now, if you're Christians and you both pray to the same God, prayer is important, because I feel like God will move certain things, and also God will speak, if you choose to so, to your spouse. Um, so I think that prayer is very important for Christians as well in your marriage. So if nobody's praying, then that might be a cause of some of the discord, because you leave room for other things to creep in. In that case, and then the other thing that I would say too is both of you can't be coming at each other like your enemies. Um, it's not about winning, because if one person wins, for real, both of y'all lose,
Yep.
in a marriage if you're having a disagreement. Um, I just feel that way. There really is no winner when there's arguments or disagreements happening. If you quote unquote won, that means somebody lost. And what good is that going to do to the relationship? So I think that's important too, to remember that the person that you're dealing with ideally is your friend first. So don't treat that person worse than you would your homeboy or your homegirl. Like, I think that's also really, really important, is that that base of friendship be there, and that you remember that you're not dealing with your enemy, you're dealing with a part of yourself. So those are my little 2 cents or whatever on
Yeah.
that.
So to add to that, as I've been saying since we kind of been talking about marriage, the topic is for the last couple weeks have been about marriage and relationship. Um, the first thing about a relationship or marriage, especially marriage, is it is completely about dying to yourself. That's what we teach you. You die to yourself and you give yourself to the all. We talked about how the wife is supposed to be, subservient to the husband. And that just doesn't mean like just being a slave or whatever. It really means, being subservient, being humble to your husband. But yet at the same time, the husband's supposed to be dying for the wife. Uh, trying to do all to please his wife. So if a couple were to get in an argument, you're not dying to yourself if you're completely, being angry, fussing at, bringing up the past, and doing all that type of stuff. If that's something that you want to say, you hold it in, and then I know that brings up the thing. Well, oh, he or she always does this, okay, but words don't hurt. Now, if it's an abusive relationship, that's a completely different topic. To get into. But when it comes to like verbal disagreement and argument, things that are not being done physically, we're human. Words don't hurt. Actions, per se, don't hurt. Like, once again, unless it's physical, we can't feed into that. You have to die to yourself. You have to do your best not to fuss back, not to argue back, not to engage in negativity. As long as we are doing right, as you as a partner, as long as you're doing right, that leaves the other member to decide whether they want to be with a good person or good individual, or to separate themselves. But if we as the individuals want it to work out, we're doing everything necessary that this relationship can continue. And that we put the weight on the other, because now they have to decide if they want to choose the same thing and focus on themselves, which overall betters their relationship. Kia, we lost you for a second. Do you want to add anything to the topic?
I don't even know what I would be responding to, because I froze right after I said something.
Yeah, we continued on the same topic. We didn't know if you wanted to add anything else to it. 'Cause I know you didn't hear all that Tiffany said. But just if in general, you have anything else to say on that idea, or how to respond?
No, no. Mm-mm.
And the other thing that I wanted to add to is, if you're having disagreement, the quickest way to end a disagreement is to stop talking.
Yeah.
The biggest issue I had, even as like a kid and in my relationships with like my friends or even my family, when we had disagreements, is I always had to have the last word. So an argument was always happening, because, and like as I've gotten older, I've learned you can't argue by yourself. It takes two people to argue. So if somebody, one of y'all, hopefully has the presence of mind to just be quiet. Just let the person air out whatever their grievance is, and I promise you that will help to diffuse the argument. There's been times when, I feel some type of way about something, and Damien is like, he's that dude. He is cool hand Luke. He will be quiet, and I just be sitting there like, I'm a stupid. I just shut up now. So I think that's another strategy too, is to just be quiet. Just be quiet. Just hear, because a lot of times what the person feels some type of way about may or may not really be about you. They might just need to vent and air out how they feel. And instead of like making it personal, sometimes the better thing to do, I would say, not the easiest, the better thing to do is just be quiet and to listen.
Yeah, I agree with that. And because I can't remember who I was saying this to. I was talking. It was about relationship, and we practice all the other stuff that the Bible says. We practice, it could be, stuff like fasting, prayer, worship, things that Christians normally do. And we always say, things like turn the other cheek. This that's the same thing that you're just saying. You turn the other cheek. You just, you ignore it and you say, okay, well, you threw something else at me. Let me give you the other cheek. We tend to say that physically. Oh, if somebody punched me or hit me, me being a Christian, I'm not going to retaliate. But it's hard for us to do that when it comes to words. You know, if somebody say something to us verbally, you know, it's hard for us to give them the other cheek to hit that one as well. And it applies to both physical and verbal words. So if someone is arguing or in a relationship is arguing and, you know, just stirring things up, give them the other cheek. You're still, you know, you still practicing, um, uh, you know, the Christian ways of Christian belief. Don't give into it. You just don't argue. Like that's one thing I said from the beginning, and Tiffany can vouch for this. I told her I would never ever argue. I'm just not gonna do it. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of words. It's a waste of energy. You're gonna have your opinion. I'm gonna have my opinion. So if there's argument in the relationship, okay, have your opinion, but that doesn't mean you should say it. You should, you know, beat the other person, your spouse down. No, just you know, take it. You're like, you know what? Um, it's not worth arguing right now. If you want to discuss it and talk about it, I'm all for it. But the arguments just leads to more arguments. You know, as adults, you know, we can't not say anything. It's hard for us to literally turn the other cheek or you know not say anything when it comes to arguing. He's like, oh, you brought this up, so I'm gonna bring this up about you. But if we like I said, we put this in perspective uh of you know Christ's relationship with the church, he doesn't retaliate on us. He doesn't bring up the past, you know, in the relationship of being married to him. So why do, as believers or even non-believers, why do we constantly bring up the past when it's not necessary, when it's not needed? We're actually just saying things to hurt the other individual, which is not the point of a relationship. If you're in a relationship and you're being abusive with your words or even physically, then maybe you shouldn't be in that relationship. Maybe you shouldn't have, you know, be in that marriage. But once again, I'm not speaking against marriage. I'm not saying individuals should get divorced, but it's something to think about. When you love someone, the intention is not to ever hurt them, whether with words, whether physically. And that is one thing that a lot of people get wrong in relationships. I do the same thing even with like relationships, you know, that is have with my friends. I don't argue with my friends. I don't ever say anything hard or bad to hurt their feelings. Those same things that we use in that relationship also applies to marriage and to relationships you know that hopefully lead to marriage. And we as a people or people in general just need to learn that you know someone's arguing at you, someone's doing something that's against you, that doesn't mean to retaliate. We should never retaliate. If Christ were to retaliate against us, we'd be in a world of trouble. So like as Tiffany was saying, give the other cheek. uh don't fight back, especially if you want the marriage to work. That's the whole key. You have to decide on yourself if you want the marriage to work. If you want the marriage to continue going downhill, and you like, you know what, I'm done with this, arguing back, you know, doing things that might not necessarily be argument, but just doing anything to get back, to hit back, is going to continue to cause that relationship to spiral downhill. Relationship is all about doing for the other person. It is not about being selfish. Love is not about being selfish. If you love someone, the individual that you love, you don't do everything for yourself. When you love someone, it always goes to the other individual, friend, parents, whatever. Is about you know exchanging how you feel upon them, you know, in a good way. And many relationships today are just not doing that sort of thing. It's all about themselves, and that's when things, like I said, turn for the worse and just head downhill. Um,
I have a question for you, Damien, um, because I just thought about something. When, well, I guess I can only talk about us in this aspect of it, I guess. But expectations. What expectations, or did you have expectations when we got married? Because I think that's something important to touch on with why sometimes marriages can find themselves in trouble.
Yeah, like I said, my expectation for getting married when I was getting married is I actually wanted to have a relationship that lasted. Like that was the focus. That's the main thing. And a relationship, and I knew for sure relationships do not last if individuals are arguing. I didn't see too many physical, you know, abusive relationships. I didn't see verbal abusive relationships, and the whole time they don't struggle, they're not really happy in it. And I was just, I made up in my mind that I want my relationship to be different. And I can say pretty much in all relationships that I had in my lifetime, I never argue. I just refuse to, because in the end, you look silly. You're just sitting there just arguing at each other. No point is made. No point is made. What is the point? What was the point of those words? Just like I have on the show, there's no argument on the show. You can have your opinion. You walk away with your opinion. So I'm not gonna, browbeat you with my words to try to change how you think. But what I can do, I can change how I react to what you said or to the things that you do. I can react. I can change my ways. And I knew that if I focus on myself, even though I may do things, in a relationship that makes the individual unhappy, I can still better myself to hopefully change their perspective on how they view me. So that's how I went into the marriage, or any relationship.
Okay, so I think what I was getting at is that you had any expectations out of your, whether it be our marriage or, and I'm not trying to like, you know, put our stuff out there per se, but like I think part of the issue with like even friendships or family relationships, where we find ourselves in trouble is like we expect a person to be a certain type of way because of the role that they fulfill in our lives. So did you, when I say expectation, did you have like an expectation of me or people you dated before? Did you have an expectation of, oh, I'm marrying Tiffany, I expect her to be this way and do these things in this order? Yeah.
So when it comes to that, no, I didn't have an expectation because first of all, you have to be interested in the individual that you are, planning to have a relationship, or the individual you're trying to court, or even your marriage. So first of all, when you start to get in a relationship with somebody, you already see the good stuff, because you're interested in them. So when you see that and they see they have the qualities that you like, you have to, you expect those qualities to last on in that relationship. But I didn't necessarily want you to change because I was dating you at that time. So obviously I like with the qualities that you have. So when I got married, no, I just expect you to either be the same and not get worse, or or expect things to change. So I think that's what individuals may get hung up on, is like, okay, when we get married, she's gonna get better or he's gonna get better. It's like, no, the person that you started dating with, that the individual should stay that person or they should get better. And then, like I said, focusing on yourself, hopefully that allows you to get better. Focus on the things that you may be doing wrong. And that's why I did in this marriage. Nope, I didn't expect you to change. I expected myself to get better, and hopefully that will help you out as well. Does that make sense?
It does. So I think for me, because I think all of us could say we've seen many different kinds of relationships in our lives, and you can glean the kinds of things that you want and the kinds of things that you don't want from it. Um, I think growing up, having parents that were not together, I didn't necessarily get that firsthand exposure in that way, but I knew the type of person who I wanted to marry. Now, other stuff such as like lifestyle and things like that, some of those things don't come up until you're actually like living together. So, things for me like not really living with a male before, just things like that came up, I think, early on in our marriage, just different ways of doing things. But I think if people let it, those kinds of things, if they're not ready for it, can be a major thing. The other thing, too, that I wanted to bring up as well is even as Christians, you can, if you're single, and you have your own relationship with God, and you may have taken some time to allow God to heal you in some areas, but there's some things in you that will never be touched in the same way until you find yourself in a serious relationship with another human. And that's where you come up with iron, iron sharpening iron in that case. Meaning, like, there's some things for me, I can say personally, that I didn't even know was an issue until I got married and until I had a family. So I think that's the other piece of it that I don't know if you touched on yet is the idea that you can say, oh yeah, everything is cool, everything is good in this particular area of my life. But being in a relationship with another person, dealing with their own stuff, their own prior traumas, their own, things that they've seen even as children growing up that still in them, they might not realize it. Those kinds of things may not come up until you actually get married. And that's why, as our pastor says, when you get married, you're going to have trouble in the flesh because you're dealing with some things that, even though God might have shown you was an issue, you're not, it's different. It hits different when it's just you and God versus when it's you, God, and your spouse. So, do you want to speak to that a little bit? I know you're the host, but that was just a point that I think is important to bring up is the fact that some stuff you might not even know is an issue until you actually get married.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's true that, some, habits, things that, like I said, individuals are dealing with emotionally, because now when you get married, you're in the same household, you're going to see them 24/7. You'll wake up with them, you go to bed together, you eat together, all those things. So you're going to see more of the individual. And but with that, you know, we have to realize that you were with that person before then. You already seen the better qualities, and those are the qualities that you focus on the most. And if someone has something, like say you don't, um, you don't bash them for that because they didn't show you, because they wasn't in a situation to show you. So now living together it's an issue now because you see it all the time. But now we have to, like I said, you have to get to the point that we turn the other cheek, give the individual time to change, give the individual time to recognize, and that's when it comes down to talking. We have to verbalize what you have an issue with, and then also be able to receive if there's criticism as well. So couples need to come together and talk about what you have an issue with within the relationship, and then try to work it out, try to talk it out to resolve the problem. um, because like I said, you already saw good qualities in the person, in which allows you or wanted you to marry that individual. Now that you begin to see the negative, doesn't mean you sever the relationship because you now see stuff that was very deep. And like I said, this goes back to just being like if we were in a relationship with Christ. The more we have, the better. The more you are in a relationship with Christ, and the more you want your relationship to become better with Him, the more faults you see in yourself, because He's just perfect. But He doesn't cast us aside, because now that we have these things that we deal with, these things that were in the closet. No, He wants us to pull them out so He can address them. And it's the same thing in a marriage. Your spouse is going to pull the bad things out, or they're going to reveal the bad things that you have about yourself, whether it's anger or whatever. You're going to see those things come out in a relationship. And once they come out, it is up to the couple to show and address that problem together, to talk about it. And if you just continue to hide it, it's going to always be a problem. um, so yeah, so that's my perspective on that. Yeah, we already know what you are like. We already know what the marriage is going to be like, because we already see what the courtship was like. And based on the courtship, you have to focus on those good things, and try to work out the other things that's going to come up in marriage. I always use the example. I got my friend Mike. We've been homeboys since we were like 8 years old, and we never fought each other. We never we always had a great relationship. But when I was in college, I asked him to come spend the summer with me while I was in college, so that he can get a job. Man, the moment he moved in, we started bumping heads. We were arguing. We were at each other's neck. I was getting to the point I was like, man, you need to just get your stuff and go back home, because I don't can't deal with you here. But what happened was, we decided to sit down and talk about it. And after we talked about it and had that discussion, he talked about the things that he didn't like that I was doing, and I told him the things that he was doing that I didn't like. And then after we talked about it, the rest of the summer was smooth. And then he came back the following 2 summers, I think, and everything worked out because we talked about it. But like I said, before we had this argument between us, we were homeboys. So it's once you move with someone, that's when the stuff start to come out. When you're under the same roof, seeing each other every single day, and it's at that point that we have to start to become, you know, use communication throughout the whole situation. And like I said, I never went for his neck. You know, I had so many things I could have pulled out. Why? Because I knew him since we were 8. So I got dirt on him. He got dirt on me. What's the point of that? The problem is we want to solve the now. And it's not about bringing up past stuff in a relationship, because only you doing is hurting more wounds, because that person loves you. And if you say something against them or about them and pull up the past, you're just opening the wound further that that individual may have. No, you want to close it. You want to love on them, if that makes any sense.
Okay, so we said a lot. What strategies would you um, offer to people who may be watching and dealing with someone who they're in a relationship with, whether it be romantic or otherwise? Um, because I'm a person who likes practical application. So
Yeah, like to me, like I said, I try my best to be very practical, in my life and rational about things in my life. Like I said, it comes down to if you how or if you want to be a better person. If you are, sorry, I froze, guys. If you are bettering yourself, then it ultimately it affects the individual that you're with in a more, positive light. So we have to learn to first love yourself, because if you don't love yourself, it's going to be hard to love an individual. And if you can't love yourself, then like I said, that's where we focus on bettering yourself. Whether uh, it's through talking to other people. If you're saved, as prayer, study, and all that. If you're unsaved, it can just be reading books, talking to family members, um, realizing the things that issues that you have, writing them down, and then narrowing in. Like, I want to work on my anger problem. I want to do this. So learn steps to anger management. Um, and I believe in that. And like I said, just making a decision about what you want to do. Um, you make a decision about it. Like, I want this relationship to work out. And being that you want that relationship to work out, you're gonna do all that you can to try to please your other half. That means doing everything. What do they like? Okay, they don't like me doing this. So I'm gonna try not to do that. And just doing that alone would I believe would help marriages or help relationships. Because like I said, the first thing that goes wrong, the first thing I see is one member does something, the other member responds with either the same thing or something worse. Instead of responding, "What, you're right about that. Let me walk away." Even if you're angry, you know what? We're arguing. Let me come back to this. Let me walk away before I get overheated, before I get intense in this moment. Let me just walk away, and then I'll come back and we can discuss it. So that's that's the topic I can give to that on how do you deal with somebody's issues, if they are marriage issues, if the individuals is coming for you. It all comes down to you just being a better person. People always say being the bigger man or the bigger woman. You dealing with it and say, if I say these words, if I do this thing, how is it going to affect them? How is it going to affect the relationship as a whole? And based on that, you make it your decision. If you say something that goes against what that person wants to hear or to anger, they just don't get angrier. You're not going to help it. So we have to change ourselves in order to better relationship.
the other piece too that I wanted to bring up is counsel, the importance of wise counsel, whether it be something is formal, is actually seeing a therapist. If you feel like that there's a need, and that can be the case whether you're Christian or not. Is I think therapy is I think that can be an important tool in your toolkit if you feel like there's some issues that you can't deal with without some help, without somebody to help you strategize, without someone who can help you pull out what the root is of some of the issues that you're having. Also, it can be someone who is, if you're a Christian, it can be your pastors if you have that kind of relationship where you feel comfortable. It can be an elder or something like that, or just a good close friend that you know has wisdom from the Lord, that you can seek counsel from. The Bible says, and I was just pulling up, I know this is all up and through Proverbs, by the way, which is pretty clear. I like Proverbs because it's easy to understand for most anybody. Proverbs 19 says, listen to counsel. 19, 20, and 21 says, so listen to counsel and accept discipline, that you may be wise the rest of your days. Many plans are in a man's heart, but the counsel of the Lord will stand. So that's just also the prayer, seeking the counsel of God. But also, Proverbs 12:15 says, the way of a fool is right in his own eyes. The wise man is he who listens to counsel. So if you have friends, and a good friend will tell you when you're wrong. A good friend will tell you, like, I don't think that's what's up. A good friend is typically not a yes man. A good friend is typically the person that's gonna really hold a mirror up to you and say, this isn't good. This what you're doing is not cute. Or they'll be the person that tells you, like, this thing that you are talking about doing is not a good idea. One of my best friends, who I've known since we were like 12, 13 years old, I remember I was in a relationship and she told me, she was like, you know this is going to blow up in your face, right? And I know that sounds harsh, and you know me, because I feel like I've always been pretty honest with myself and others. I said, you're probably right, but I did it anyway. And it blew up in my face. Guess what? It blew up in my face. But a good friend will tell you that. They will be able to look at your situation and say, this is not good. This may very well blow up in your face. Prepare yourself, or just don't do it. And so I think it's important that we have wise counsel, whether it be, again, from us seeking therapy for ourselves, because I feel like many people have gone through trauma and don't even realize they've gone through trauma, because we're just like, oh, everybody goes through that. Well, guess what? It's still considered traumatic, even if everybody goes through it. And so some people need extra help, but also, like, biblically, maybe seeking people such as your pastors, elders, a good friend who you know has wisdom. And we're not necessarily talking if you're a Christian carnal wisdom, because but biblically based wisdom, from God. I think that can be very helpful and very valuable. And then the other important piece is you seek counsel, and you don't have to do what everyone tells you to do, but like actually take heed to what's being said to you, because people can give you advice until they're blue in the face. If you do not listen, it's pointless. It's like dropping pearls to swine. You just dropping your pearls of wisdom on swine if they are just intent on wallowing in the dirt. So if you seek counsel, make sure your heart is positioned to receive that counsel. And in some ways, it's going to cut you, because who likes hearing that they are the reason why their marriage is failing?
No one likes to hear that.
No one wants to hear, this, and this. This is what you're doing wrong. You're pointing one finger that way, and you got four pointing back, back at you. You are the contributing factor to the destruction of your relationship. No one likes hearing those things, but you have to be in a position that you're willing to hear it and receive it, and not just think, oh, this person is just hating on me. So it's really about where your heart is positionally too.
Yeah, that's one thing when I always talk to individuals about marriage or their relationship, the first thing I always ask them is, what are you doing? What are you doing to improve the relationship? I don't even want to hear about the other person, your other half. I don't want to hear about what they are doing wrong, how they are making you upset. I don't hear none of that. It's what are you doing to improve the relationship? So when people get counsel, that's the first one of, that's one thing you should be careful of is that individual telling you to do something that will harm the individual, or are they speaking bad about the other half? First, because if they start speaking bad about the other half, it's not good counsel. Because good counsel is not going to beat someone down. It's going to try to improve the situation altogether. So be careful of that. Someone's giving you counsel that's saying do something or get somebody to react a certain way. I wouldn't take heed to it. But if a person is telling you, hey, why don't you try doing this in a good manner, whatever it may be, and see how they respond. Change your tactics to see how they respond to what you're trying to do. So just be wise on that. And that is, like I said, since the beginning of this podcast, I've been saying, what are you doing? And I always ask that, what are you doing? What are you doing to make this relationship work out? If you're not doing anything, it's not going to work out. And to this day, some of the individuals that I talk to, their relationships have gotten better, and some don't. Why? Because they didn't necessarily heed the counsel. I'm not just saying mine's is the best because I only have an opinion, and that's all anyone can do is give their opinion. But once again, it's up to the individual to make a decision. Do they want it to work out? That's what it comes down to. So we have a couple comments that I would I just wanted to address. We have somebody say, I think some people get into relationship or marriage trying to change their partner to fit or create the perfect spouse. I'm gonna say it this way: there's no perfect spouse. There's not gonna be a perfect husband. There's not gonna be a perfect wife. They can be perfect for you because they know how to deal with you, but there's not gonna be one perfect individual that you're gonna find in this world that's gonna do absolutely one things correct. I always say to Tiffany, I know I'm not right. I know I do things wrong that make you upset because I'm human. So we have to first realize that we have errors in our own way. We do things wrong. But in that, knowing that I do things wrong, I'm still going to try to do things that please my wife. That's going to be my first thing. And I tell family members all the time, before I choose you, I'm gonna choose my wife over you. Well, it can be brother, sister, whoever. Your spouse come first in everything. So you can't create the perfect husband. You can't create the perfect wife. You see what they are, and that's what you have to accept. You have Adam and Eve. Adam saw Eve, and then he accepted her. He didn't worry about where she came from or anything that she could have done. He accepted her how she is. And then from that moment, it's hopefully the individual get better. And the marriage will get better if the individuals focus on themselves to help the other person. All right. I'm gonna change this in my life because they don't like it. Your spouse cannot like smoking. So, and you're a smoker. So what, I'm gonna stop smoking because they don't like it. Not because I want to do it, but no, it's going to make them happy. It all comes down to making the other individual happy. And if both parties are doing that, if it's down to the wife, and the wife is being a servant to the husband, it all works out. He's not going to abuse her as a servant or being because she's humbling herself for him because he's dying for her. So it balances out, and then that's what we have to realize. It's not about you. It's always about the other half. In too many relationships, people are worrying about themselves in the relationship. What can I get out of this instead of what can I do? I'm the husband. We know the scripture says, the wife should be humble to the husband. I don't abuse that. But in our marriage, I'm looking at how can I die for her? What can I do to make her happy? You have to accept that. You cannot change a person. Humans cannot change humans, but you can't influence based on how you react in that relationship. So that's my response to that one about relationship and if you can change the individual. No, if that's your thought going into relationship, I would say 9 out of 10. I don't have no statistic for it, but I would say 9 out of 10 times it probably won't work out. Because you are going in there, you're going into the relationship thinking about what you want that person to be or how you want that person to be. That means they can't be themselves. If they're going to be what you want them to be, no, it's not going to work out because as humans, we do what we like. So you can't change the individual. You got to hope that the individual change themselves to please you. And I think that's why a lot of people get that wrong about wanting the individual to change for them. No. All right, let me see what else we have. Any other comments? We have Dawn Forster said, being quiet shows more strength and self control than keeping it going tit for tat. Yes, going tit for tat is not, once again, is not going to help the relationship by any means. It is all about what can you do for the other person. I apologize for the camera. The camera keeps acting out. That's why I keep shutting it off. Yeah, don't go tit for tat in any relationship. Don't go tit for tat with your children. It's not going to do anything. If anything, you're going to be teaching your child to argue. Don't argue back and forth. It doesn't solve anything, you know. And then so we also have here. So recognizing that you need to step away but come back and talk about both of your concerns. Yes, that is relationship. We do it at work. If you disagree with your boss or something, or you disagree with a coworker, you talk about it, hopefully, and then come back and say, okay, how can we do this the right way? How can we add this component the right way? You discuss it. Same thing for marriage. The couple has to come together, or in a relationship, you come together, brothers and sisters, come together, discuss what you don't like, and then you try to come to some sort of agreement. You may come to one, you may not come to one. But if you don't come to one, that doesn't mean you begin to hate the other individual. You sit and be like, okay, they don't agree with it, but being they don't like it, I'm going to change how I am. I'm going to change what the things I do while they're around, or so forth. Just so you don't get in an argument, because I don't think any human wants to sit back and argue. Well, some individuals do like to argue, but the point is to come to some sort of reconciliation, come to an agreement. But in society, today's society teaches to get things your way. It's all about you. It's all about the individual and not about the other. And by that being in the mainstream society, most individuals don't know how to, what's the word I'm looking for? To talk about problems and how to deal with them. They're just not being taught. I remember in school, Tiffany, what's that? What they used to teach that? They used to teach. It's stuck. It's right on the tip of my tongue. But I remember
psychology.
Huh?
Psychology?
No. What they taught when you disagree, how to work that out. Conflict resolution. Yes.
Yeah.
Like they used to teach that in school. I remember going to classes to talk about that, and I had it through all the way through high school. And today they don't teach conflict resolution. So many individuals today do not know how to resolve their problems. We can't talk about it. Oh, I have an issue with this. No, everyone keeps everything in themselves, and then when something happens, you bring all of it out, all the frustration, all the hate, whatever it may be. You bring it out upon a person, and then it just makes things worse, because you're just dumping all your feelings out instead of doing that along the way. Let me see. We have any other comments? Nope. That's all the comments that we have. So if anyone who's watching, we're getting close to our hour mark. If you have any questions, please add it to the comments. If you're watching on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, you can also add a comment. If you have anything that you would like us to discuss within these last 10 minutes. Any questions? You can just add it. And like I said, I'm viewing the comment live. So if you have any questions, just go ahead and add it, and then we'll discuss it.
I think the other thing is too, that I just wanted to add, is that don't be afraid to have disagreements in a relationship. I think
Good point.
It's important. I think it's healthy. I think um, it's just really important that you don't make it about the other person whenever you do have a disagreement. I think not ever. Not ever having a disagreement sometimes can be worse than having frequent disagreement, because that means there may be a lot of things going unsaid, which could be detrimental in the long run to the relationship. So, I think it's important to sometimes pause and sometimes, take your matter to God first. I think that is important. But then sometimes things need to be said and just, be fair in how the information is presented. I think that's the important piece too. Because it's
Yeah,
not like Damien and I never disagree. We do. But I think it's just how we do it that keeps it from being like a big thing and destructive.
yeah. That and like I said, that's the thing. People can't seem to disagree and get along. We see that today in society, and if it's in society, it's also happening in marriages. Like we have people today who are, if you can't come to a conclusion in politics, then you hate each other. If you can't come together on religious subjects, you just split and just walk away, not realizing that splitting always hurt the situation. And I always like to use um, always like to use the division amongst the church to describe how splitting hurts. All right, we have in society or history many times the church could come to agreement about a subject, um, whether it's about the Eucharist, which is speaking of the blood and body, the Trinity, baptism. Being that individuals couldn't agree on those subjects, the church split. You got Baptists, you got Methodists, you got Lutheran, you got Roman Catholic. Being that they couldn't agree on a situation, they split the church, or the church split, and that hurt the church because today we're not together. And Christ said, if there's division, it's going to cause things to fall apart. So if you don't agree, that doesn't mean you separate because you can't agree. You just you just agree to disagree, and you stay together. If the church today would have just agreed to disagree on things as baptism, the Trinity, and so forth, if they would just um, agree to disagree, the church still would be together. The main focus is Christ. In a marriage, the main focus is the marriage, keeping the marriage together. Okay, you don't agree with that, I don't agree with that, but that doesn't mean you split. That doesn't mean you part ways because you disagree. That is the main thing. You can disagree on politics, you can disagree on religion, but you still can love the person. Today, people cannot do that or do not know how to do that. If you disagree today, people are just splitting from me. Well, if you don't vote for this person, I'm out of here. We're not friends. If you don't believe in this, I'm not your friend. I got friends who are atheists. I got friends who are Buddhists. I have friends who are, um, Lutherans or whatever. I don't stop being friends with them because we don't, practice the same religion. I'm not gonna just be like, oh, I'm just leaving you. I'm pushing you to the wayside. No, you still come together. You just agree to disagree, and it applies to marriage as well. Anything, babe?
Nope, nothing else to add.
All right, so I think we're getting close to that. I don't see any more comments arising uh, on Facebook. Like I said, this was a subject. This was a subject that was brought up at the end of last week, so I figured we'd just talk about it. We also supposed to have more on the panel, but I think we did a good job on the topic. We do got one. I do have one more topic or one more question that came up on Facebook. It says, "How can you stay in a church or with a church if you don't agree with anything? That would be hard." What I'm saying is that you can't. I'm not talking about the church as a church building. Um, I'm more talking about like the church as a body at large. We may disagree with members or things in the church, we have to understand and know for ourselves, first of all, what the scripture says. Uh, so if there's something that the Bible is not necessarily completely clear about, then that doesn't mean you just split ways. The whole message is Christ, He's a Savior, so forth. So you stay with the body to keep the body at whole. Like I say, you also discuss the situation. You bring it up to try to keep everybody together. What happened in the early church was members couldn't agree with, like I said, the Trinity, baptism, the Eucharist, all that type of stuff. And they split and actually started a whole nother doctrine and foundation. And that's the reason why the church is so divided today. And Christ himself said, if you're divided, you don't stand. So if you were to go to, say, if you were at a church and they're speaking things that you don't like, first of all, you search it out to see if it's true. You just don't be like, oh, I just disagree. I don't agree with that. No, first go out and study to see what they're saying, to try to get a better understanding of what they're saying. And when I mean split and start a whole nother denomination. That's what I'm talking about, splitting the church. No, you can leave a church because they're practicing something that you don't like. If they're practicing, the pastor are sleeping around with the women, or the female pastor sleeping with the man, whatever it may be. If there's something you don't like, yes, you can leave and go to another church. But you're not leaving to go start a whole nother belief system. We're all under Christ. If we're all under Christ and we stand for Him, that is a purpose. He's the core. Everything else comes secondary. So that's what I mean by splitting the church, when the church itself disagrees on a subject. So I hope that answers your question. I hope that answers your question. If you have any, let me pull up and see. I'm pulling up questions on Facebook. Give me 1 second, guys. The church itself disagrees. All right, sorry, I'm pulling up. Yeah. So if you have any other questions, I'm looking at right now. Did I answer your question? The one about how can you stay in a church or a church if you don't agree? All right, you understood. Gotcha. So guys, I think that's going to be it for now. I don't see no more questions or comments to address. So with that, if you have any other topics, that you would like to hear or hear us discuss on this podcast, feel free to leave it in the comments if you were to watch later. And like I said, we look at these all the time to pull topics from, because we want this debate, we want this podcast to continue, because like I said, we like discussing real topics, real situations, and to try to keep everything and everybody together. Like I said, the problem is, the reason why I started the channel is because individuals within the body cannot agree, and out of the disagreement comes arguments, and out from the arguments come hate, and from the hate comes division. The whole point of this channel or this podcast is to show that you can disagree, because all of us, when we be on a panel, they have different perspectives. And with our different perspectives, we still stay together. We still believe. We still want the better for other people. We're not going to go out and bash. We're not going to go and say, oh, you're not my friend no more, all that stuff. No, that's nonsense. We want to stay together, but to express ourselves. So we need, as a people, as humans, learn to express ourselves, but still remain who you are, still remain loving, still want the better out of individuals. So with that, thank you. Thank you, Tiffany, for joining in. We apologize. Like I said, we supposed to have three other individuals on the panel, but like I said, there was some technical issues, I think, on their part. So with that, we thank you. Leave any comments below. We'll be sure to address them later on. Also, share this video with your friends. Share it on your Facebook posts, because we enjoy doing this. We like just having these discussions. We love talking to you guys, especially when you're having comments. Is it shows I want to show the world a different church, not the normal thing that you hear. Church is about coming together, talking, and enjoying one another. So with that, thank you and enjoy your weekend. This is Warriors for Christ, and we are done.